Now, you've seen the title and the thumbnail, and I know what you're thinking. How could anyone hate player choice? How could someone be against a game having free and open design that lets players create various circumstances for themselves? Or at least, you're thinking something along those lines. Well, that's not exactly what I'm talking about here. Player choice from a gameplay regard is one of the best things a game can possess. The ability to tackle each mission in a variety of unique and creative ways is one of the core elements that separates games from movies and TV. So what kind of player choice am I talking about? Well, it's a trend that's been spiking up in recent years, a trend that in my opinion puts a black smudge on otherwise near perfect games. I'm talking about narrative focused single player games and their recent obsession with including some kind of split narrative. Essentially, when a developer decides to give a game multiple endings for seemingly no real reason. So what is so wrong with this narrative player choice that's sprouted up over the years in the industry? Well, to me, this concept of multiple endings and added player choice has been tacked onto games that simply don't need it. The earliest that I can remember a high-profile title forcing in some monumental choice for the player was in 2013 with GTA 5. As you reach the end of the story, Franklin comes to a crossroads, with the various connections he's built up throughout the game turning on each other, and he's tasked with killing both Michael and Trevor, the other two playable protagonists. Now, if this was actually a choice, it could have ended up being an incredibly tough moral dilemma. Do you kill the psychotic maniac who was betrayed and abandoned by his best friend and essentially left for dead? Or do you kill the cunning millionaire, the man who betrayed his friends for a quick payday, who for all you know could betray you at the drop of a hat? That could have legitimately been a fantastic ending to what's already a striking satire of the entire concept of morality and civility. But of course, that would mean that one of our protagonists was dead, and well, we can't have an unhappy ending in our game, right? Well, apparently Rockstar didn't think so. So to avoid anyone getting mad about the choice, they instead included a third option, which despite being labelled Death Wish, is so obviously the quote-unquote correct ending that it's actually slightly insulting. Instead of killing either of his comrades, Franklin instead gets them together for one final showdown against all the people who've wronged them throughout the game. And whilst this ending, don't get me wrong, is massively satisfying, it completely dilutes the entire purpose of putting the choice in there. Instead of sticking to their guns and actually forcing the player to make this choice, Rockstar copped out and just included a good ending that completely negated the choice even existing in the first place. And worse still, Rockstar would go on to do the very same thing in their next game. Red Dead Redemption 2 to me is the best game ever made, and that's largely due to its absolutely flawless story. Or should I say, nearly flawless story. Despite the near perfect narrative of Arthur having a beautiful conclusion, it's unfortunately hidden behind a shallow choice that completely undermines his entire character arc. At the end of the game, right on death's door, after months and months of growth, after seeing the error of his past ways, realizing the life he missed out on, losing his brothers to death or insanity, and seeing that the only way to redeem himself is to save John and his family, Arthur understandably would see John the whole way out and make sure he gets to safety, even if he has to sacrifice himself in the process, right? Well, you'd assume so. That would make complete sense, and would be the perfect conclusion to Arthur's incredible journey of redemption. But for some completely inane reason, Rockstar decided that this emotionally resonant climax needed a bit of player choice roped in. So they decided to give the player the choice for Arthur to go back to the camp and get the money that Dutch had stashed away. The justification of this is weak at best. I mean, Arthur's on the verge of dying of tuberculosis. It makes no sense for him to get the money for himself. So he essentially says he'll go get it to give it to John. But for Arthur in his final moments to be thinking about money once again completely contradicts his character arc throughout the game. It goes against the missions with Edith Downs, the conclusion of the tax collecting missions, everything that Arthur goes through over your 60-hour journey. And once again, there's only one choice here that is the right choice. Only one choice that gives the most narratively satisfying conclusion, and the fact that the correct choice is so blatantly obvious even further dilutes the point of the choice existing in the first place. Another series this faux player choice has seeped into is Assassin's Creed. Yes, I know, I just can't help myself. Assassin's Creed conceptually has always been built on the idea that you're reliving memories, you're reliving actual events that were fixed in history. But then, Assassin's Creed Odyssey changed all that. Despite still reliving the memories of a real person, the player somehow has the choice to control the events of the protagonist's life and the gender of said protagonist. The justification of these choices, even more so than any other game, completely fall flat on their face, as the game claims that multiple DNA strands and some kind of special animus magic allows for these choices to occur. But, as Warren Vidic explains in one of the first lines of the series, that's simply not how it works.
You're inside the animus.
Which is?
It's a projector that renders genetic memories in 3 dimensions. What is a memory, Mr. Miles?
It's the recollection of a past event.
Specific to the individual remembering the event.
Yeah, sure.
What if I told you that the human body not only housed an individual's memory, but the memories of his ancestors as well? Genetic memory. Our DNA functions as an archive. It contains not only genetic instructions passed down from previous generations, but memories as well. The memories of our ancestors.
And the Animus lets you decode and read these DNA files.
Precisely.
The decision to include choices and multiple endings was probably spawned from Ubisoft's desire to push AC in an RPG direction after seeing the success of The Witcher 3. And whilst those choices completely break the franchise lore enough, the gender choice is even more disastrous in that regard. Because if you've read the Odyssey novel, you'll know that Cassandra is the canon protagonist of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. She was the one who had those memories, and she was the one who came into the possession of the Staff of Hermes. But regardless of canon, at the end of the game in the modern day segment, whichever character you chose to play as shows up in a tailored fucking suit. It makes absolutely no sense, and to quote a certain Assassin's Creed YouTuber, it does fundamentally break the series lore. All for what? All to include some surface level player choice that ends up with countless completely unsatisfying endings to the game's story? I don't know about you, but in my opinion, that decision just simply isn't worth it. Oh, and Valhalla shares a lot of these problems, but I did go over that in my review of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It came out a few months ago, so I'll leave the link in the description for that. Don't get me wrong, there are without a doubt some games that completely justify their player choice, and although personally I'd prefer a conclusive ending, games like The Witcher 3 and the Telltale series make player choice a core element to their game, and craft their stories to be satisfying regardless of the player's decisions. But as time goes on, it seems more and more narrative-focused single-player games want to copy this formula without actually putting the effort in of making every choice viable and purposeful. Imagine if, in Batman Arkham City, you could choose whether to kill or save the Joker. It would take so much emotional impact away from that now iconic moment. Imagine in Red Dead 1, you could choose whether John saved his family or abandoned them to become a fucking bounty hunter. Imagine if you could choose whether Edward Kenway left piracy to be with his daughter or not. Imagine if you could choose whether Joel saved Ellie in The Last of Us. Imagine if in Marvel Spider-Man you could choose whether to let Aunt May die or let the rest of the city die. These surface level player choices that are trending upwards don't necessarily ruin their respective games, but what they do is massively dilute the potentially iconic endings of games that would otherwise be flawless, and provide the option to the player to potentially ruin a narrative for themselves. There should never be a wrong way to experience a story, and when choices are done right, there usually isn't. But more and more, games are actively making their narratives worse with this inclusion of player choice. Games are a very different medium than TV, films, novels, or comics, but the fact of the matter is, all of those other mediums have stories that contain a single, narratively satisfying conclusion. Games do of course have the potential to open that up and provide multiple satisfying conclusions, but almost every time that's attempted, there is one clear choice that's better than the others, and one that's clearly the wrong way. The player should never feel that they've played a game the wrong way, because not only is that displacing blame for a story's quality, but it also leads to an infuriating feeling after sitting through tens of hours of story just to be told the conclusion's unsatisfying because you did it wrong. As per usual though, that is just what I think, that is just my opinion, and I'm sure plenty of people will have different opinions, so let me know yours in the comments below. If you disagree with me, if you agree with me, let me know. Also, it would really help me out if you could hit like, it does really help out the channel, and if you enjoyed and want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe with post notifications turned on. You know what to do, hit the bell. If you want to support the channel, Patreon links, Twitch links, Twitter links, Discord links, all in the description below. And with all that being said, I've been Joe, aka Found a Scarab, and I will see you in the next one.